just want to thank everybody for coming. And now I'd like to introduce our guest for today, Debbie. Thank you very much for joining us again.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you to Quincy Public Library for allowing me to continue to do my injury prevention outreach work for Tufts Medical Center's trauma department. Again, my name is Debbie Lynn Toomey, and I am the host of this program, Aging Strong, Falls Prevention and Stress Management for the Aging Adult. And today I have a great special expert. Her name is Peg Doyle. And Peg Doyle is a speaker and an expert in the field of nutrition and lifestyle. She is also a member of the National Gerontology Academic Honor and Professional Society. She's a passionate clinician, educator, and Peg is committed to the vital link between food and health. Her primary audience is women over 50 who desire to live full, vibrant lives. Oh, I love that. She published her first book, Food Becomes You, Simple Steps for a Lifelong Wellness in 2014. And it's an easy how-to on eating well and preventing the diseases of aging. She sees clients in person and also virtually. Peg Doyle, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today, and I can't wait to learn about what you have to share with us. Before you do start, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, and thank you both for inviting me to be a part of this really important program. I think it's wonderful that you've had this outreach to the community on a very important topic. So my background is that I have been practicing body work and nutrition coaching for 23 years now. It was later in life career change, and one that doesn't even feel like a career. It feels like I'm playing because I love the work so much. Watching people make simple changes and having their life change for the better. It's just, well, you know how good that feels when you see changes like that. So I have an office in Westwood, but I've been speaking more and more locally and nationally and trying to get the word out that we really are meant to be well. Some of the fallacies associated with growing old can really inhibit people's desire or interest in pursuing activities that can keep them well. So a program like yours, Debbie, is so important because you really do find out it's part of everyday life. It's a lifestyle issue. If we make simple changes, we can live very long and very healthy lives.
What are you going to be talking about today? And how can people, the aging population, live longer, happier, healthier lives?
Well, part of the major part of what I'll be talking about is related to food and really breaking it down into different categories and how each one is important and helpful in terms of overall health. But I'll also move into what I call the 5 pillars of health, because even though food is my major area, what I also feel is that it's not just one thing that we do. It's a combination of lifestyle issues. So I'll be addressing them. I call them the 5 pillars of lifelong wellness. So we'll talk about those too.
Great. Thank you. All right. So I think I'm ready, and our audience is ready to learn more about what you have to share today.
Okay, great. So I need the share screen, which I see. So here's a nice little plate full of kebabs of beautiful, colorful vegetables, and it just makes my mouth water. I don't know about you, but
it does.
So, what I want to accomplish today is to talk with you about how food supports us and prevents falls. It is really an essential part of muscle building and bone building to have a healthy diet. And how do we build a healthy plate? What are the essentials? And how can we also make it affordable? I've noticed since the pandemic and the supply chain challenges that food is getting very expensive. So I do have one resource I'd like to share with everybody at the end of the program. Okay, so food and lifestyle. What I see about frailty and decline is that they're really lifestyle issues. So we may hear that falls are a major cause of nursing home admissions, as well as accelerated end of life. Really, it's not the fall. The fall is the effect of a lifestyle issue that is composed of a number of things: activity, nutrition, and focus. All of those things. Vision is another thing, hearing, so that we have various ways of preventing falls and preventing that decline and frailty that can occur. So nutrition is critical for our muscles and bones. It's critical for strength and balance, for disease prevention, as well as overall well-being. With COVID, we've heard so much about the risk of contracting COVID, the COVID virus, but actually what we can think about in protecting ourselves is how food can play a role in building a strong immune system. So food is really essential in so many ways for keeping us healthy and long-lived. So now I want to talk about the essentials. So we can hear about protein and carbohydrates and fats, which I'm going to talk about today, but we really need to know how and when to use them and how much. So I have some photographs of typical protein sources. We have beans, we have lentils, we have chicken, fish, eggs, and red meat. On the right, we have yogurt, another source. So what does protein do? Why is that important in the diet? Well, it builds tissues and muscles, and it repairs. We think sometimes that athletes need lots of protein. We all need protein because it repairs our body tissues. We're in a constant state of shedding and replacing and repairing. So we need to have these nutrients in order to make those functions work. Protein also helps us maintain our pH. And by that, I mean, we have a certain level of pH that we want to stay pretty steady in our blood, and it's a balance of acid and alkaline. When we eat too many high acidic foods like bagels and cookies and candy, we get an acidic condition in our blood. So we want to really avoid those things and focus on the alkaline kinds of foods with some acidic, but you don't really even need to think that deeply about it. Just think of these foods as protein sources and know that they also help to balance fluids in your body. We have this ongoing system that is regulating so many aspects of our body. And so we need the nutrients that will help provide for those functions to operate. We don't say, okay, let's let's make sure there's enough fluid in our blood, in our muscles, in our brain. It just happens because of these systems within our bodies. We're really pretty amazing inside and what goes on, but we need the nutrients to make that happen. Protein also has a function of transporting nutrients throughout the body, and it generates energy. So how much do we need? We need 3 servings a day of good protein. Anything that you see here, and a couple of additional ones, including lentils and peanut butter. And that can be about 3 to 4 ounces. So that's about the size of the palm of your hand in terms of volume. Some foods are higher in protein than others. These are really high protein foods that you're looking at. So, and I do want to say that we'll answer any questions afterward and talk more about any details that I'm addressing here that you want to go into a little more deeply. So the next thing I want to talk about is vitamin D. It's the sunshine vitamin. Super important for absorbing calcium in your body, super important for building a healthy immune system, preventing disease. So again, here we have many high protein foods included that will provide vitamin D for you. In the Northeast, where we live, we have really no ability to absorb vitamin D from the sun between November and March because of the angle of the sun. So we really need to get that vitamin D from foods and very often from supplementation. The only way you can reliably know how much supplementation you might need over and above your food would be to have your D level checked. So you do that by a simple blood test, and that will give you a number that will tell you whether you're in range or whether you need to supplement. So make sure when you see your doctor or your nurse practitioner that you get your D level checked. Really, really important. It affects your bones, your mood, your immunity, and it even is in research shows that it can protect you from cancer, certain cancers. So very important. Now I want to move on to carbohydrates. You may hear that carbohydrates are bad, but we all know Tom Brady. He lives on about 80% carbohydrates because this is what he lives on. Fruits and vegetables, all different colors, different textures, different ways of growing, some underground, some over the ground, but beautiful, high nutrient foods. They contain vitamins, minerals, and many antioxidants, which are disease protectors. So I do want to mention that we hear about mineral deficiency. Carbohydrates are really the only source of minerals. We don't get minerals from meat or dairy. They come from fruits and vegetables. So what I would say to anybody about making food selections is start with the protein we talked about already, start with carbohydrates, make sure that you choose foods that you like. There are more than 100 vegetables available today. So you don't ever have to eat a vegetable that you hold your nose and swallow quickly. That's absolutely not necessary. Choose foods that you like. Enjoy them. Best way is to get fresh local foods. and choose all colors. There's something in each color variety that you should find that you enjoy. Also, eat mindfully. And by that, I mean, don't eat in front of the television set or in front of the laptop. Sit down at the table, enjoy your food, taste it, chew it, smell it, really take it all in, because food becomes you, just like the name of my book. Food changes into your muscles and tissues and bones. It becomes you. So appreciate it while you're eating. And finally, monitor your digestion in the process of eating. Not every high nutrient food is good for every person. We're all unique. And so when you watch how you digest, you may find some foods make you gassy, others may make you constipated, and others are just fine. But I would advise you to always vary. Once you identify foods that make you not feel well, obviously don't eat them, but don't only eat the same thing every day, because you could develop a sensitivity to it, or you could just get sick of it and you'd be limiting yourself in the specific nutrients you get if you only eat one color or one fruit or vegetable. So mix it up, make it fun, make it varied, be creative. Cook most of your vegetables, particularly if you have any thyroid issues. Really important not to eat raw broccoli and cauliflower and the cruciferous vegetables. So, but overall, get your veggies and use my 90-10 formula when you're trying to eat well. Don't try to be perfect. Go for 90% really good high nutrient foods and just relax on the rest. We're not perfect and we shouldn't be. We should have some guilty pleasures in life, and foods can be one of them. So now we'll go to the third really important nutrient, and that's fat. Fats are really important. It's just the kind of fats that you have that matter. So you don't want to have highly refined fats, but recognize that your brain, our brains, are made of 60% fat. It may be where the expression fathead came from, but we have a lot of fat in our brain, and it's a really important essential nutrient. Add a slight amount of fat to your salad when you're having a salad. I like to mix a little olive oil with balsamic vinegar. I find that really nice, with a little lemon. And then get your fat sources from fish oil, avocado, olive oil, nuts, nut butters, seeds, salmon, mackerel, anchovies, and fish oil. So you may notice, looking at this, that we've already seen some of these foods, because fat sources very often are also protein sources. So you kind of, for the most part, are combining your fats and your proteins into a single food. And then you mix that with the carbohydrates. So that's generally how it works. I've mentioned a few others on the list: grass-fed meat, pasture-raised eggs, organic butter, and cheese. I mentioned red meat earlier, and what I would like to say about red meat is make sure you look at the label when you buy meat. Don't buy meat that has antibiotics or added growth hormone. Neither one is a healthy choice for you. So whenever you can avoid that, please do. So now the process, we might say, okay, we know what we should eat, but how do we make that happen? That can be the tricky part and something that we need a formula for. So first off, planning. Think about what you need at the grocery store before you go, or maybe you're ordering online. We've had big changes since COVID in terms of our options. So plan ahead of time, make a list, and do your shopping. Then the prep work. Some people say, oh, I hate cooking meals. I'll just get something prepared. When you get something prepared, you really have no idea what is in it in a specific sort of way. And by that, I mean where the ingredients came from, how they're combined, how much salt or sugar might be in a prepared food. So if at all possible, make your own food. In the end, it's less expensive and it's much more nutritious. I personally, this may sound a little strange, but I love cutting vegetables. So I have a special knife that I use, and I think of the process as being almost like a meditation. I'm looking at the food I'm preparing and appreciating it and getting it cut up and knowing it's going to be cooked shortly and that I'll get to enjoy it. So if that doesn't appeal to you, do some prep work over the weekend or whenever you have time. Just carve out a couple of hours, do all your work at once, put it in the fridge and have it ready so that you can make a meal very quickly. By the way, I have a website, wellnessandyou.com. And if you press on the yellow search button and put in the word recipes, I have dozens of them there, and none of them take more than 20 minutes to prepare. So I invite you to check that out. After your meal is prepared, sit down, enjoy it, light a candle, make it an experience. Appreciate that this is becoming you, this food that you're putting in your body. And then finally, give yourself time to digest, particularly after dinner, because we do all our body repair work while we're sleeping. And the best way we can accomplish that is by not having our bodies needing to digest while we're asleep. Digestion uses up energy. We want to save that energy for repair work while we're asleep. So give yourself 3 hours between your last meal and you're going to sleep. You'll get the best repair work done that way. And now, affordability. If you are familiar with Trader Joe's, and most of us are, it's a great little store. They are a place that does not sell meat containing antibiotics and added growth hormones. So that's an easy resource. But the former CEO of Trader Joe's, Doug Roush, left the company and went to Harvard Business School to further his education. And part of the experience there was a requirement that he start a business. So because he had been in the food and grocery business, he went in that direction and he founded Daily Table, which is a grocery store that sources from larger grocery chains that have excess deliveries or slightly overripe vegetables, not spoiled by any means, and also surpluses in other areas. So he has a store in Dorchester, another one in Roxbury, and a third in Cambridge now. So it's a great little resource. Go on the website if you have access to the internet, and you'll find much more information about the resources. I believe they even have delivery. So check it out. It's very, very reasonable and affordable for anybody. And the store in Dorchester, I visited when it first opened, and it was kind of ironic. You could spend $5 there and get a bag full of really good groceries, or you could go across the street to McDonald's and get zero nutrient foods for the same amount of money. So it was quite a contrast to see these two stores right opposite one another. So that's what I have on affordability. And now I want to touch upon what I call the 5 pillars of lifelong wellness. They're food, movement, rest, social connection, and purpose, all part of a quality way of life. So with our food, what, where, and when you eat really matters, as well as all of the specifics around the nutrients that are included in there. Sleep, it restores and repairs, very, very important. Moving, it lets us shake off our stress and build up our strength. That's sort of my motto. Shake off your strength, your stress, build up your strength. We have to move in order to have strong bones, strong muscles, and good balance. We can't do it by sitting in a chair. So keep moving. I always like to talk with and watch the 95-year-olds and 100-year-olds. When you live that long, it's because you're doing these things. It's not just genes, it's lifestyle. So look at how a 95-year-old moves. They keep moving. They're not in a chair all day. And then rest. We talked about that, how we need to get quality rest. Sometimes it's challenging, but a big piece of that is making sure you have those 3 hours between your last meal and your bedtime. Slow down. Don't watch the news before you go to bed. Do something restorative for yourself. Just gently wash your face. Do a little skin scrub with a washcloth on your arms to stimulate your skin. Do a meditation if you're inclined to meditate. Say a prayer of thanksgiving that you had another day. Think about what you might want to do the next day that will bring you joy. Make the whole experience of resting a positive one. And then social connection. We have had quite a challenging almost 2 years of social isolation. And because we are adaptable, we've found ways to work around that and to connect this way, to connect. I saw 6 older adults sitting in the parking lot of the grocery store the other day, having coffee together outdoors. We saw more of that early on in the pandemic, but we're still seeing it. People have found new ways to connect. And what we know about connection is it is absolutely vital to life. A newborn baby cannot survive without touch. We need it too. So find ways to connect. And the last thing is purpose. What do I mean by that? I mean, what gets you up in the morning? is there something that makes you say, I'm glad I'm here for another day because I can't wait to whatever? If nothing comes to mind right now, start thinking about that. What is it that gives you pleasure? What is it that gives you purpose? What is it that puts a spring in your step? And do it. Really take the time to do it. You deserve it. You've lived a long life. You want to be able to celebrate and have some reason to get up in the morning. So really think about that. And the last thing is action plan. We can talk about all of these things forever, but if we don't do them, it really doesn't matter very much. So what I like to do with an action plan is to think about one thing. Let me see if I can get back there. Yes. One thing on these 5 pillars that you feel maybe you haven't given much time or attention to lately, but that really needs to be tended to. And work on that. Don't try to do everything. Just think about what it is that's really important to you that hasn't had enough attention, and go for it. Make a plan. Decide a timeline. For the next 3 days, I'm going to whatever. For the next week, I'm going to. By the end of the month, by the end of October, I will have, and you fill in the blank. So just be kind to yourself, love yourself, and create your own lifelong wellness. You deserve it. So that's it.
Wow, Peg, I've learned so much from you. Thank you so much for your presentation. I do have some questions. I was jotting down some notes as you were talking. So as far as your 5 pillars, the food, movement, rest, social connection, and purpose, what is the best way to implement any of those pillars during, say, the holidays? How can people enjoy their food, still maintain that promise to themselves that they'll watch what they eat without having that guilt?
Sure. Great question, Debbie. And I think that if we consider the 90-10 formula, if we are eating well 90% of the time and relaxing on the other 10, if we do that consistently, I always say on Thanksgiving and Christmas or Hanukkah, whatever holidays you may celebrate, don't worry about it. It's not what you do on those holidays. It's what you do every day that really matters. So you have a piece of pie and a bowl of ice cream at the end of Thanksgiving dinner. If you don't do that every day, that's not going to harm you. In fact, it might give you a lot of pleasure. So what I would say about that is don't worry about the food so much. Don't worry about guilt. And more than anything, let me see. Is this screen still showing my slides? I can't quite tell.
No, it's
Good.
not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just enjoy the time. I think holidays are minefields in many ways. We can be very lonely. We can be overwhelmed by too much company. We can feel we don't have enough money. We can have all sorts of feelings. So I would back up and really think before we even talk about the food, to really think about the self-care aspect of the holidays and What are we doing? Are we getting enough rest? Are we taking care of ourselves? And food, of course, is part of it. But I think an overall description or challenge for us, whether it's food, rest, movement, social connection, or life purpose, is our stress level. So we have to sort of back up and think about that. Where are we with stress? What are our expectations of ourselves and of other people? And how are we managing that in a way that is beneficial to us? And so when we can do that, things start to slow down and we can get a better perspective. I always feel when talking about stress that we all have stressors in our lives and they just come at us. Some of them are chronic and others are situational, but we all have some level of stress. And the part that we have an opportunity to control is our response to it. The way we respond will make a difference in our adrenaline, in our energy level, in our sleep, in our behavior, in our interactions with people. So to back up and really think about how am I managing that and how can that improving on that improve my behavior in all of these other areas of well-being.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you talked about stress because certainly it's during this pandemic, it's been very stressful for everybody, young and old. And there's just, every day there's something a little bit different. Not so much now, hopefully, now, but in the beginning of the pandemic, we were glued to the television because we didn't know, is it okay to go out? Is it okay to stay in? Is it okay to go to the hospital? Where can we go that's safe? And, what should we do? So that's calmed down some, but still there's that inherent level of stress with, the changing weather and the Delta variant and the booster shots and all these different multi-layer of stressors that's still going on. And then to add to that, in the region where we're living is the change of the season. And now, again, the holidays are coming. So there's more stress going on. And depending on how people fared during the pandemic, they could have been okay. They could have had some really major losses. Friends and family, maybe, or maybe their job, maybe their homes, just a total different type of lifestyle. And so from what I think I heard you say is just really being mindful of yourself and controlling what you can control and maybe giving yourself permission to just take it easy and take care of yourself. Self-care is so important. And as you mentioned in your pillars, rest and social connection, maybe talking to somebody that you really trust and you can just kind of share your feelings because that's so important. We're social beings. And social connection is actually one of the predictors of living a long life. And having a purpose, having a reason to just kind of get excited or some sort of a joy in that moment, no matter if it's trying out a new recipe from those beautiful colors that the vegetables and fruits that you showed us on your slide, or maybe going on a little drive somewhere different, just having that little glimmer of purpose, just so that you're feeding your not only your body, but your soul and your spirit.
So well said, Debbie. And, I think that as people who want to give a lot and help our neighbors and our community and our families, it's easy to put ourselves last. And so important not to do that now. As you pointed out, through the pandemic, we've had so much stress, and I also do body work, shiatsu, and which is a form of acupressure. And I didn't see people for several months during the pandemic. And once I started seeing them, I saw stress in their bodies that I had never seen before. We're carrying a lot. It explains why people blow up in restaurants when they're not waited on quickly enough. It's not the time of waiting. It's the fact that they are so tense and worried chronically that they just have trouble and explode. So the explosion happens when it's prolonged lack of self-care. And so I can't stress that enough. And one thing I would like to share in terms of managing anxiety and stress when we're in situations where we really feel like things are building up. It's a calming tool. It's part of the acupressure meridian system. There's a point right in the center of the palm of your hand that helps to lessen anxiety. And all you need to do is take your thumb from the opposite hand and press gently in the middle of your hand and repeat it 2 or 3 times. It will calm you right down. And when I first learned about that point, I thought how interesting and smart we are as humans, because what do most of us do when we're stressed or anxious? We just rub our hands. We wring our hands. So we're going right for that point instinctively. But now you can do it consciously and really use that as a tool wherever you are.
I'm so glad you shared that. It's so accessible. It's
Yes.
right there. We just have to remember to use it or use it purposefully.
Yeah.
This reminds me of something that you also mentioned in your presentation, which is to monitor your digestion. And as you were saying that, monitoring how our body reacts to the food that we eat, and it got me thinking about being more aware of what our body is doing when it's doing certain things, like eating or drinking. Does it make us do certain foods, make us more tired than others? Do eating the same type of food in the morning, lunchtime, or dinner affect us differently? So I feel like the more we're able to really become more in tune to our body, its needs, giving it what it needs, and also once we give it what it needs, continuing to assess or evaluate, was that what my body really needed? Mm-hmm. Am I getting the response that I want? My body, if I ate food, yes, I'm full, but boy, an hour later, I might be grabbing some Tums or something, or maybe I'm grabbing coffee because maybe what I ate, my body said it needed, but maybe it was just too much, and maybe too much carbs or something that made me really get tired. And now I'm reaching for that cup of coffee.
Such a good point. And that's exactly what does happen. When we start investigating or observing how we feel after we eat, we can determine what works for us and what doesn't. And what I would say also about that is we're always changing. What works really well for us at one time may not work well at another time. And an example, too, about developing sensitivity to different foods is I happen to love oatmeal, and I get Bob's Red Mill whole oats, and I cook them up in the morning in the winter. And a couple of years ago, I started noticing that I would get a burn right up my esophagus a little while after I ate it. And I thought, this is so strange. I've eaten oatmeal for ages and never had this problem. So I stopped eating it, and I waited about 2 months, and then I tried it again, and I was fine. So what I learned from that experience was I was eating it too often. I needed to vary. And so I started plugging in more protein some mornings, having eggs instead of oatmeal. It's just the best food in the world can be not the best food all the time, is my point.
I love that you mentioned that, because we're being taught so many different things about eating, healthy eating. You have to eat your breakfast. You have to, drink your orange juice in the morning. But then studies are showing orange juice is not really the best thing for you in the morning because it's loaded with sugar. Try something else. Or maybe some people might say, skip breakfast altogether, try fasting. And so that your eating window is much shorter and you'll be able to burn more food. But then other people will say other things. There's just so many different conflicting informations out there. And just going back to what you're saying, know your body.
Yeah.
Know your body, and also understand the fact that for me, as I'm getting older, I cannot eat as much as I did a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And for me to kid myself and say, well, I used to be able to, eat all this and not gain any weight. But my aging body, if I eat what I ate a long time ago, I would be a bigger me, which may not be a healthier me. So being thoughtful about the changing needs of our body as we get older is very important, don't you think?
Absolutely. And we're all bio individuals, and by that I mean no other person is exactly like you. You are unique, and we live in our bodies. We know our bodies better than anybody. So if we pay attention, we'll know what's right for it. And if we don't pay attention, because bodies are very adaptable, it will go along for quite a while before it makes much noise. But when I have worked with people in nutrition coaching over the years, one thing I always hear after a couple of months is, I never knew really how bad I felt until I started feeling good again. And it was all food. We can be very adaptable and get along on junk, but it catches up, and it's a slow decline that occurs for most people when they have a chronically poor diet. You can get along, but you won't have that spring in your step to find your life purpose. You won't have good sleep. You'll have chronic, mild or major indigestion. So it's worth the effort to get into good habits with your food. And one other thing that I didn't mention that's so essential is water. Make sure you're hydrated. Your muscles critically need water. So make sure you have enough water. And that can come in the form of plain old water, or soups, or the water that's in vegetables and fruits. You can get it in many different ways, but make sure you get your water.
Thank you. Can you speak a little bit more about what some people would call the SAD diet, the standard American diet? And how can people start how can people become more aware of what that is and how that type of lifestyle is affecting their health?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned a minute ago, we live in our bodies. And we have functions occurring all through the day and night. You know, when you think about the human body, from before you were even born, your heart began beating, and it beats every day, waking, sleeping, all of your life, and all these other functions are going on too. So they need help. The older we get, the more attention we need to pay to it. When we're younger, you know, we get a pass for several years. We can really fool around with crazy diets, too much food, too little food, and just function because we're born with that sort of vitality, but it will fade if we don't do something. So the standard American diet, or SAD, doesn't really give us that much. What it is it's comprised of a lot of packaged foods that have multiple chemicals and additives in them. Every time you eat a food like that, it may be easy to prepare because it's sort of all you do is heat it up. But every time you eat a food like that, if you could envision your digestive system, these chemicals need to pass all the way through. They need to get filtered by the liver. They need to get excreted. It's a lot of work for your body that isn't necessary if you eat simple whole foods. It also, in terms of nutrients, these foods that come in packages are so broken down. They're emulsified, and so the real nutrients that any of them started with are pretty much gone. That's why you'll see added vitamins, added ascorbic acid, things like that, because the food in and of itself is really like dead food. It has no life in it. So standard American diet over a lifetime will create issues and risks for you that are really not necessary if you just get in the habit of eating real food.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. Totally agree. Can you speak a little bit more about, you mentioned oils, and sometimes oils get a bad rap and they say, oh, don't cook so much with oil, or that's fried, be careful. But you mentioned so many different types of healthy oils, like avocado oils and fish oils and olive oils. Can you speak a little bit more about that and how people can start including that into their diet so that they'll be able to start benefiting from those type of oils?
Sure. The best way to get fats in your diet is to eat a whole food like an olive or an avocado. That they're just terrific. Also salmon, foods like that. But oils also have a purpose in providing some fat for you, as well as making your food more tasty. And fats have flavor to them, so that makes the food tastier and less dry, which is something that we like. So incorporating them into your diet in small portions can be really beneficial nutritionally. But get good quality. With olive oil, get the extra virgin. If you're cooking at high temperatures, use avocado oil rather than olive oil, and just make little variations like that. And I think you'll find it all very beneficial.
Thank you so much. You're making me hungry. We have a couple of minutes left. I just wanted to, if we could talk just briefly a little bit more about the daily table, and what people can expect. It seems like whatever surpluses grocery stores may have is what they will offer. So it might be different all the time. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that question.
Oh, it's the daily table. Resource that you provided for us. Can you tell us briefly a little bit more about that, so people who may live in the area might want to check it out even more?
Yeah, I don't feel like I can give a lot of information about it because I've only been there once. But when I did glance at the website, there's a lot of information there on it. And one thing I'll offer too, if anybody is interested, is I have a list of foods that I recommend and give some specific brands as well as general foods that I feel are great essentials for your pantry and refrigerator. So when you purchase the foods that are on this list, you really have the ingredients to put together a meal very easily in 20 minutes or less. It includes whole grains, fruits, vegetables, particular brands of peanut butter, crackers, things that, can be either really healthy or be filled with those additives we talked about with the standard American diet routine. So
how can we get that list, Peg?
Just email me at peg@wellnessnu.com and I'll send it right off to anybody who asks for it.
That sounds like a very valuable resource. So thank you for being, making that available for all of us. Yeah, thank you. So we're at the top of the hour. So Peg, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and being able to share your knowledge about nutrition and, what it takes to continue to live a healthy, long, happy life. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I learned so much from you. And I also want to thank the Quincy Public Library for continuing to support my work in injury prevention. Peg, thank you again.
Thank you. My pleasure.